One of the reasons why Django is great is because it forces you to set things up in a way that is scalable and allows you to reuse code really easily. So in this video, what we're going to be doing is setting up kind of the default templates that you use in Django. So more specifically, it's kind of like we're going to build like a base HTML file where the middle section of that HTML file gets swapped out for different content depending on which page you visit. So for example, you would have like a header. A header is always going to be on, every page, no matter what. Every website has a header. Every website has a footer. But the content in the middle is what changes depending on like what URL you visit. So Django allows you to set this up really easily. And I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Let's just take a look and set it up. So the first kind of step in this procedure is we need to tell Django where we're going to be keeping the templates. We need to build like a templates directory, like a default one. So the root level templates directory is going to go into the root level folder, of course. So I'm going to right click on source, create a new folder, and this folder is going to be called templates. Now inside of templates, this templates folder is where we put, like I said, all of the top level template files. So the first one we're going to build here, I'm going to right click, go to new file, and press Control S to save this right away. And I'm going to call this just base.html. Now inside base.html is going to be that home screen view that we're going to be building. I'll actually bring up a browser just to kind of give you an example. So if I visit openchat.xyz, which as you know is the website we're going to be building in this course, you'll notice there's this header at the very top, and this doesn't change no matter what page you visit. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's also a footer, and this does not change also no matter what page you visit. It's the content in the middle, like I said. So if I was to like go to my profile, the header doesn't change, the footer doesn't change. It's just the content in the middle that changes. So this base.html file that we're going to build right now is going to contain the header, a middle section called the body, and then a bottom section called the footer. So that's what we're going to build now. So like every HTML file, we have to add a doc type to the very top here and designate it as HTML. Then I'm going to create an HTML tag. Oh, it actually generated all that for me in Sublime Text. So all I did there, if you didn't see, was I just wrote HTML and I pressed tab, and that all got generated for me. I probably should have known that it was going to do that, but I guess I just forgot over time. So now we have our kind of default HTML file. Now let's get kind of the things that we need in here. First, I'm going to say my language is English, and now we're going to work on the header. Inside the header, the first kind of tags or attributes that I'm going to add here is I'm going to add a little bit of metadata. So the first will be a metadata saying that my character set is UTF-8, and I'm going to do another meta tag. And inside here, I'm going to set some parameters that we need to make a website usable on mobile. So it makes it fit into like a mobile browser more effectively. So we say name equals viewport, and you could look this stuff up. This is kind of like common knowledge. This is a meta attribute that you need for setting things up on mobile. So width equals the device width, and then we have comma. So inside of the quotation mark, initial dash scale equals, or -1, I think. No, it's equals 1. And then we're going to do another comma and do shrink to fit equals no. And for the title, we can do, I don't know, just do coding with Mitch chat, or whatever you want. Doesn't matter. This is just the title that'll show up in the top of the browser. Now let's work on the body. So inside the body, the very first thing that I like to do always is I like to set a style tag for my body, and I like to make sure that it's always going to occupy the full width of the screen, the full height of the screen. Otherwise, you can have kind of a weird look where, if you have a browser open and maybe the body content doesn't occupy enough height, sometimes what will happen is the footer will end up here, and that is obviously not what you want. You want the footer to always be anchored to the bottom. So what I like to do is I like to set a maximum height to the body so that no matter what, the footer is always going to be kind of anchored to the bottom. It's kind of like a hacky thing, I guess you would call it, but not really. It's pretty straightforward. So you want to do minimum height is 100 of the view height, so like 100% of the view height, and then I do 100%. So always when I'm going to give it the body this class name of main, and then it forces it to occupy the entire kind of the entire height available, so it always looks good. Now I'm going to create that div for that main body. So of course I want to give it the class of main, and inside of here is where we're going to use some Django stuff. So this if you're new to Django, you're not going to know what this is all about. But I'm going to write block content, go to the next line and do end block content. So inside of these kind of Django tags here, block content and end block content, I'm creating a block where I'm going to be swapping in and out content basically. So just like we saw in open_api.xyz, the header stays the same, the footer stays the same, then what is in between it changes. So that's what's going to be inside of this block content. That's what's going to allow us to kind of swap in and out different views depending on what the URL is. Now we need to add a footer. So you could do this a couple ways. Like you could actually create a footer tag down here and add it. But what I usually do is I usually just put the footer inside of the body and I add it externally from a different template. And I'm going to show you how you do that. So this is how you keep code nice and clean. So this is a Django thing. I'm writing include, and I'm going to include an HTML file called footer.html. Now I haven't created this. We're going to create this right now. So basically what this is doing is I'm going to create an HTML file and I'm saying put that HTML file right here inside of base.html. So now let's right click on templates and create that footer.html file. So I created a new file. I'm going to save this. So footer, we need to create a new folder in here. So go into templates, right click and create a new folder called snippets. This is just like a convention that I like to use. Whenever I create a template that isn't kind of standing alone, if it's being included into another HTML file, I always call it a snippet. That's why I kind of appended or pre-appended snippet to this file. So it's going inside of the snippets folder. Now I'm right clicking to create a new file and I can get rid of this one. I'm going to press Control S and call this footer.html. Now footer.html is going to be very simple for right now. I'm just going to create a single div and give it some content that says footer. Basically there's going to be pretty much nothing here right now. It's kind of just like a placeholder. And while we're here, I'm going to also create the header. So I'm going to right click on snippets, press Control S and create the header file. So header.html. And I'm going to do the same thing. Just create a div, write some content into it, press Control S to save that. Make sure I'm pressing Control S on here to save that. And now in base.html, we have a footer included, and I'm also going to include a header. I like to put it inside of the body. So depending on what you like to do, you could put it in the head, you could put it in the footer like I showed you. You could create a footer tag. But what I like to do is I like to just create these snippets, and I like to put everything inside the body, and then I separate it based on how I organize it. So like this is the header, obviously, up here, and then down here this would be the body, and then down here you would have the footer. So I don't need HTML tags to tell me where to put my code. I put my code where I want. This is going to be my header. Then we have the body, which is kind of all this section right here. And then we have the footer going down here. Now to help keep things nice and clean, we've kind of separated out our header code. We've separated out our body code. We've separated out our footer code. To keep the styling equally as clean, we can also separate some styling. So we can create like a global level CSS file, which, as you know, if you've done any kind of HTML stuff, which I expect most of you have. Hopefully none of you are completely new to HTML. CSS adds styling to your HTML and also JavaScript. So we can create a top level CSS file, a top level JavaScript file, and then include them in our base.html file so that therefore they will be applied to every single page on our website. So it keeps things nice and clean. So let's go into our snippets directory here and create a new file, press Control S, and this one I'll call base_CSS .html. Now you could create like a raw CSS file. This is just kind of how I like to do it. It's just kind of a habit of mine. I create an HTML file even though it's only going to contain CSS, and then I start it with a style tag. Now inside of here, I'm going to put all of kind of the top level styling that I'm going to have in my website. So first I'm going to add some font styling. So inside of this head tag that I just created, I'm going to create a new font family attribute. We're going to be using Segoe. I'm not really sure how to say this. Segoe UI. Do a semicolon and do font weight and set that to 380. So for those of you who are new to CSS, if you've never seen this before, I suggest you do some studying on CSS. It doesn't take long to learn about it, but I really don't want to spend much time on it. There's a lot to cover in this course, and CSS basics is not one of the things that I want to cover. But basically what I've done is I've said everything inside of the head tag. So look inside here, this would be the head tag. I want that to have a font of this and a font weight of that. That is what that says. Now I want to do the same thing for the footer. So I'm saying everything inside of the footer tag, even though we don't have anything inside the footer tag, I'm still going to put it in here just in case you guys decided or someone decided to put code inside of the footer tag, even though I didn't. Then we have the body, which is where we have pretty much all of our code. Now I'm going to do the font family, same thing, and I want to set a background color to white, or actually it's going to be a very light gray. So F2, F2, F2. So if you look at openapi.xyz, that's going to be this color back here. Notice there's kind of this light gray color, and that's going to be our background color. If you're wondering where I got this F2, F2, F2 thing, that is a hex color code. So any color can be looked up through a color chart. So if I like Google, hex color code or hex color picker or something like that, doesn't really matter, hex color code, hex color chart, whatever, and you click on any of these links, it gives you a chart that you can choose color. So you can move this around, and then this thing right here is going to be the hex color code. So if you want to find the F2, F2, F2 one that I chose, you can type F2, 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 press enter, and that will kind of move it to the section. So it's this very, very light gray color. It's almost white, just kind of barely gray. So if there's any color that you want to pick, you could just go to any color picker and change the hex code. Pretty simple. All right, so back to the project. So I'm going to set a couple other kind of global properties here. This is a tag that can be used for variables. So I'm creating a kind of like a list of variables that I can reference in other CSS in the project. So the first one I'm going to call main background color, and that's going to be F2, 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 F2. So I'll show you an example of how these would be used after I kind of define them all here. So dark background. These are like global colors that I'm going to be using over and over again in different parts of the project. So I'm just defining them so that they're easily referenced, kind of thing. Secondary text color, and this one will be 808080, and the last one here will be light primary text color, and that one's going to be 0080FF. So what are these things? So the way that this can be used is in other templates or other CSS, I can set colors. So like if I want to, set a property called color, I could access these constants by going var and then referencing the name of it. So like main background color, for example. So it allows, like I said, it's like defining constants that can be used in other places in the project. So these are just some common colors that I wanted to make sure that I define so that because they're going to be used in other places. All right, so now we have our base CSS, we have our base.html. I want to make sure I include that base CSS file. So inside of our header section here, I'm going to do include snippets, do base_css.html, and now we're going to make one more file. This is going to be the base_JavaScript file. So base_JavaScript. So right clicking on snippets, pressing Control S, this will be base_js.html. And inside here, I want to create a script tag because inside of a script tag is where you define JavaScript. Now for now, this is going to be empty, but later in the course, we will come back and put some top level JavaScript stuff into this file. So going back to base.html, I'm going to save this one more time. And now we are ready to move on to building our first kind of home screen view. So right now we have this base.html file, but we have no views that are going to inherit this to use all these things that we've set up. Oh, actually, you know what? I do have to do one thing before we do that. So I'm going to minimize templates and go into our root level project file. We need to tell the Django project where to find our templates. So we've created this kind of templates directory, and it's also inside of all the apps that we create later, we're going to create other template directories, but our Django project doesn't know where to find that. So we want to go into our settings.py file, go into templates, and we need to define something inside of this attribute right here, dirs, for directories. Inside here, we need to tell it where to find our templates. So I want to do os.path.join, use the constant base directory, which is defined at the very top here. So this will programmatically get the root level directory for the project. So basically, it's going to get this source directory. And we're passing it in here, and now we're telling it, where are we? Right here. Now we're telling it what the templates directory name is, which is just templates. Now I only need to ever do this one time, so I'm pressing Control S, and now this is configured, and it knows kind of, Django will be smart enough to look through all of the directories and look for any directories named templates, and it knows that that's where it's going to get these from. All right, so we have our templates. Django knows where to find our templates. Now we need to build our first view, so kind of like the home screen view. As I said, from openchat.xyz, we need to build this middle part. And to do that, what I like to do is I like to build an app called Personal. So Django projects are all about apps, if you didn't know. I'll actually get on camera for this and explain. Django projects are all about apps. So you create the Django project, and then within the Django project, you create these things called apps. But basically what apps are is they're features. They're features within your app. It's a way to keep things organized. So if you wanted to build, like as an example, which we will be doing in this course, if you wanted to build a feature that was all about account management, you would build an app named account. If you wanted to build a feature that was all about notifications, you would build a feature or an app called notifications. Yeah, so I'm sure you get the idea now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to build kind of a top level feature, I guess, which is more or less just a feature that I like to build that kind of holds all the things that don't really have a home. So it's a feature of, it's like a feature of misfits, like a feature of misfit content that has no home. And I like to call this feature personal. So let's create that. So to create a feature or an app with a Django project, you write Python manage.py start app, and then whatever the app name is. So in this case, it's going to be personal. And like I said, this app is home to everything that doesn't really have a home. And that's going to be like our home screen. I always build a personal app, and the home screen content always goes within that personal app. That's just kind of how I do things. So notice that now that I've entered that into our command prompt, we have a personal directory that's been built here. So this is the feature personal, and there's a bunch of stuff that was generated. The admin files, so everything that needs to get added to the admin console. Apps, which doesn't really do anything. It's just like a Python thing for configuring. Models, this is something that we will be working with extensively, not in this feature, but in other features. It's to define all the database models, tests for testing, and then views to actually build the view. So the ones that we're interested in is models and views. That's where you're going to be spending 95% of your time in all of the features. So the first thing you need to do once you create a new feature is actually go into settings.py, and you need to add this app to the installed apps list. So I'm adding personal here. And also what I like to do is I like to add a comment that says like, my apps, and then down below that, it'll be like third-party apps. Third-party apps, because you don't have to, there's apps that are already pre-built out there that you can get through the open source community, and you can install them. Those would go in this kind of bottom section here, but the apps that I build by myself, those go into the kind of top section here. Now I'm going to press Control S, and our app is ready to use. So we're going to build like a very, very basic view here to display our home screen. So I'm going to go into views.py and define a view. Now there's lots of ways to create views with Django. You can create class-based views. You can create like basic views. Basically the choice is pre-built views with pre-built functionality, or you build everything yourself. I'm a fan of building everything yourself, so that's what we're going to be doing in this video, in this course actually. So we're going to call this home screen view. It takes request, it takes arguments, and it takes keyword arguments. These are 3 parameters that you need to pass to, well actually technically you don't need arguments and you don't need keyword arguments. I could get away with that, but it's just good habit to have arguments and keyword arguments. We're going to be looking at those later in the course, so don't worry about those now. Now I want to return the view, so I want to render it, pass the request. I want to pass the name of the template that we're going to be inflating. For this, it's going to be personal home.html, which we haven't created yet. We're going to create that later. And then we have a context parameter. So this is how you pass like variables to the view that you can use. So like if I wanted to pass a variable named, my name, and set that equal to Mitch, I could pass that to the context, and that would get passed to the view, to the UI. But we're not going to do that. I'm just going to pass an empty Python dictionary, which is just basically like passing an empty list of variables, and just because it has to have something here. We're not going to pass anything right now. Now that I've defined this basic view, I need to actually build the HTML file, and we need to set up the URLs for that view. So I'm going to right click on personal, go to new folder, call this templates. Inside of templates, I'm going to create another new folder named personal. And this is just a convention to how you want to set up the hierarchy. I know it seems weird, personal templates personal. Why wouldn't you just do like personal templates or something like that? This is just how Django requires you to set it up. This is how you should always set it up. Remember, inside of settings.py, we defined our template directory to be the base directory and then named templates. So what Django will do is actually look through all of the apps and look for templates, folders named templates to find those HTML files. So you always have to have templates inside of here. And then you add personal because inside of the view, I'm appending personal here. So it's going to look, it's going to see templates. It's going to say, okay, now I need to look for personal. Okay, now I need to look for home.html. So let's add home.html. So add a new file, call this home.html. And now inside of home.html, basically what we want to build is the thing that we want to put within these content blocks here. So this is a Django thing. We want to extend from the base view. So extends base.html. And then I want to add block content. So block content, and then I want to do end block content. So basically what we're doing is we're saying extend from the HTML file base.html, and everything that is between the blocks for block content, this is what is going to go in there. So that is going to get inserted between these two blocks right here. I actually forgot to save this, so make sure to press Control S on there. Now inside of here, we're going to just do something very basic. I'll do just a div and just do home, because this is going to be the home screen. Now press Control S. And as a last step, we want to go into our URLs and we want to tell Django which URL is going to be responsible for bringing this view in front of the user. So I want to say path, it's going to be empty because it's just going to be the home screen. So no URL, basically, just the kind of domain. I want to use home screen view. So we're going to need to import this. So home screen view. I haven't imported that yet, and I'm going to give it a name of home. That's for later, for creating shortcuts that you can use to inflate that URL. We're not going to use that now, but I just wanted to add that parameter. So now I want to do from personal.views import, and I can create a list of views here because there could be more than one. You could just import one since we're only going to be importing one here, but generally, it's good to create a list because generally you're going to have more than one view that it's going to be being imported. So you can create a list. It just keeps it more organized. So I'll leave it like that just so you can see, and import the home screen view, and then we have that all set up. Okay, so now let's go to our development environment. So here's our development environment. We're going to need to run our server. So python manage.py run server. And now I'm going to go in here and refresh it, and we should see our home screen. Looks like I made a typo, end block content, not content. So I just need to fix that really quick. So going into should be home.html, that should be content, pressing Control S, going back to our development environment, and there we go. So notice there's our header, there's our home, and if I scroll down, there's our footer. So that's the nice thing about what I was talking about in base.html, where I set the main kind of class here to occupy the entire height. That footer is always going to be anchored to the very bottom. So if I didn't have that, let me just comment it out and just kind of show you. If I was to get rid of that, save it, go back and refresh, notice the footer's up here. The footer should never be up anywhere near the top. It should always be at the bottom. So I like to add this little bit of CSS to kind of force the footer always to be at the bottom. So there it's at the bottom. We have the header and we have home. So we have like our basic kind of template structure now all set up. Next, we're going to work on styling our website a little bit. So right now there's nothing here. It's pretty ugly. Next, we are going to work on getting Bootstrap installed so that we can add this kind of header. We can add the footer. We can just generally make our website look better.